Welcome to Microsoft SaaS Stories. I'm your host, Jason Young, a curious engineering manager here at Microsoft. And in this episode, we'll be exploring how Access Infinity saw an opportunity in their consulting business to create platforms to help their customers at scale. And they realized early the importance of coming up with a pricing model that drives positive user behaviors. Today I'm here with Keshav Nagaraja. He is the managing director at Access Infinity Digital and leads a team of specialists that are building category-defining products for the market access function within the pharmaceutical industry. Welcome. How's it going?
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's going really well. It's a busy time for us. There's a lot going on just getting ready to travel for an event in the US in a couple of weeks.
Excellent, excellent. So let's get into it and talk about what you've built here. So I guess let's start with, what does your company focus on and what products do you have?
Sure. Access Infinity as a business, we've been around for over 8 years or so now. Started off as a strategic consultancy working within what's called the market access function within the pharma industry. Not many people actually even understand, what this function does, but it is a very strategic part of the pharma business, which is responsible for launching new products in the market. So they get involved once a drug has seen some positive results from the trial, but they are not launched yet. So they are responsible for getting all the regulatory approvals, be part of the price negotiations, and then really support the global launch, which, for big brands could be in hundreds of countries around the world. We offer both consulting as well as digital solutions for the market access function. And our heritage was in consulting, but over the last 4 or 5 years, we started building some digital solutions as well. Saw there was an opportunity to really scale that, and that's where I came on board a couple of years back. We've got, I would say, 2 types of products. We have productivity platform, which typically clients use to really bring more efficiencies in the way they operate. Taking away, Excel and PowerPoint as a mode of collaboration to really using an online digital platform for that. So that's Access Hub as one of the products. And the second product we have is Neuro, which is a data platform. And Neuro actually combines over 450 data points across all this approved products in the market. So we allow clients to do a lot of competitive insights and analog analysis capabilities out of the box.
Okay. So you saw an opportunity in the consultancy. You saw probably the same questions being asked over and over again, the same problems, and you saw an opportunity.
Exactly. And our products actually evolved on the back of the work we were doing with our clients on consulting, because they were launching drugs in different markets, and they were sharing with us the pains of, coordinating that global launch. Yep. So the global market team, for context, tends to be a very small team. But they have the responsibility to launch the product worldwide. And that means that they have to coordinate with hundreds of people around the world. They need to be tracking progress of the launch. They need to be supporting them with data that they may need. And that was very cumbersome if you're doing that over email and Excel and PowerPoint and phone calls. And they used to spend hours together in preparing reports and dashboards for their senior management. And all of that kind of gave us the idea that we can actually build a digital, solution, for the market access teams to use that. And similarly, Neuro came about because our consulting team used to analyze a lot of data to actually answer the questions that the clients had. And it used to be an Excel with very complex formulas and, pivot tables and so on to really get to the data that we were interested in. But then therein lied an opportunity to actually build a data solution that can scale. We could add more data. We can make it much easier to do visualizations out of the box. And that's how Neuro evolved as well. And actually, our consulting teams continue to use that. They're probably one of the biggest users of the product as well.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then we're here specifically to talk about SaaS. So what motivated you to, use a SaaS model? Was it something that you thought of up front, like you always wanted to be SaaS? Is it something you evolved into? Was it a goal that you had initially or came up with later?
So when I joined a couple of years back, so there's kind of two answers to that, because Neuro, which is our data platform, kind of was born SaaS. Whereas Access Hub, when I joined, we had quite a few clients for whom we had built some bespoke applications. But then when I started to look at what we were doing, they were pretty much doing similar things, but in slightly different ways, because one client had a slightly different requirement to how they wanted to do their launch tracking, for instance. So one of the things that I realized was that it's best to actually convert that, reimagine that product as a SaaS platform. And also there's probably another context which is also quite important, is that we used to take 6 to 8 months to build that application for a new client. It used to cost us every time that we were building it, and the clients had to sometimes wait for months before they could start using it. And every time you wanted to launch a new feature or introduce a new capability, we had to go to the clients and say you have to pay for it, because we had to do that in that bespoke version of the code for them. So it was not an ideal situation to be in. And the vision we had was that we could actually convert that into a product. And given it is also a product which is largely a category defining solution, because there isn't anything out there, we saw an opportunity to actually bring a solution that clients can start to use in a matter of days. And that can help us, also inform our pricing strategies. We can turn on and turn off some features depending on their appetite to pay, and have like a premium version, for the later phases of, the relationship. So that kind of really gave us, the idea to go down the path of SaaS, to make it more scalable, to be able to really roll that out in a much more efficient and quick fashion.
Right. It sounds like it was about the speed, the agility, the flexibility, and just being able to get it in the hands of your customers, right?
Yeah, and optimize our cost, because we were, we had a large team maintaining all our different versions of client applications, but we've now streamlined everything. It is one product, and then we have, a lot of features that we can start to roll out for each of them, and at no cost in most cases.
Okay. And how did you actually build these solutions? Like, what were the actual technologies that you used, or are using, I should say, on the Microsoft tech stack?
Yeah, so we are on Azure. We've always been on Azure. When we were in a custom bespoke sort of world, we were on Azure at that point. We were quite pleased with the capability that Azure, and of course with the rest of the Microsoft stack we could have. So we've continued to stick on that path. One of the products actually started off on Postgres, but we realized the limitations, so we migrated to SQL Server. That's on Neuro. It's all .NET, core. We use a lot of Azure native capabilities as well for security, for authentication, and so on. At the moment, and I'm sure we will talk about it, it's the hot topic at the moment with artificial intelligence, machine learning. We are also exploring how we use the OpenAI and Azure capabilities for our product as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to get into those a little bit more. So until we get to there, can you describe to me, like, what is the pricing model? How do you price this for your customers?
Actually, that's a really good question, because we spent a lot of time discussing what our pricing strategy should be. And we've got slightly different strategies for our two SaaS solutions. One of them is the typical per user, model, because that's for Neuro, where we have tiers of subscription, so our clients can pay for per user, and then there are enterprise level licenses and so on. But with Access Hub, and as I said earlier, it's a productivity platform which actually relies on different country teams, updating their status, their, data onto the platform. The success of it would only depend on how well and how much it is used. So we wanted to move away from a per user license, where then clients might start to worry, oh, what if I launch another 10 countries? Do I have to pay more? For the new set of countries as well? We went with a per brand model where we charge clients on a per brand basis, and then there's an enterprise level not to exceed sort of price where our clients then can really do an enterprise wide rollout where all their brands can be monitored within Access Hub, which also then helps them to bring in more institutional learning within their organization across brands to look at how one brand is doing compared to the other and so on. So the license there is model is slightly different.
What a great lesson, though. Your pricing model determines how the users are going to use the product, and you have to think through if you're going to be encouraging them to use certain things less or use it in a lesser way, or if you want to promote them using the product more, right? So I love that. You do need to spend a lot of time thinking about how you do that. It's not about just like maximizing, trying to figure out it's not a math exercise to figure out how you optimally price this. It's about getting the users to use it in the way that you want. That's such a great insight. That's such a great insight.
Yeah, and I think we took the client, first approach. We wanted to think about how the clients would actually, what can encourage the clients to use more of this without having any commercial hindrance around, adopting this organization wide, and that kind of influenced our decision.
I love that. So then just sort of taking a step back, what were some of the biggest challenges that you ran into? And then, and really think through they can be business and they can be technical, or they can be technical, right?
And if you don't mind, I'll probably answer that across the two products because there were slightly different challenges for Neuro, which is our data platform. Because in Neuro, what we do for context is we have data for multiple countries and different types of data that we source from various and public sources. So it's all publicly available. So we need to bring all that data. We need to ensure that we can map the data to that brand. We need to ensure that we remove deduplication. We take care of data integrity issues. There's a lot of work goes behind the scene before the data can come into Neuro. And that required, it was probably a big technical challenge, more than anything else, in ensuring that we can build a platform that can accommodate that. We can have enough validation rules built in to ensure that there are no data issues, because that was for us number one priority. Whereas for Access Hub, it was a very different challenge because we didn't have any other solution to look at. We didn't have, a comparison for that matter. So we had to really step back and think about the business, challenge that we are trying to address. We wanted to try and reimagine what a solution like this could look like on the back of the work we had done for a few clients already. The risk there was that we didn't want to be limited by the knowledge of what the client requirements might be. We wanted to ensure that we do enough research to ensure that we can cater to various client requirements that may come up for a product like this. So a lot of time went in that upfront kind of phase of user research and bringing in our own institutional knowledge into a product requirement document that we know will cater to all the needs that our clients would have. And then the challenge for us was probably more of a mindset issue. How do you get the team that's working with us working to a spec for a specific client need?
Yeah, based on billable hours too, I assume, right? That's how they were thinking.
Exactly. To how you step back and think product and think SaaS, and how do you build something that can be customized to different client needs. You can switch on, switch off things. So that was for us quite a big challenge as we were kind of conceptualizing Access Hub as a product.
Yeah. So, while you were thinking about the business side, then do you think that was the technical side kind of easier then? I mean, it sounds like a lot of the things you mentioned were on the business side. Do you think that was kind of the bottleneck was actually on the business side and the technical came a little bit easier?
I think so, because to be honest, it's not an overly complex, product as such, where we had to ensure we pay a lot of attention was on the scalability and security side of things.
Exactly.
So while there were some technical issues we had to address, for instance, to give you an idea, a lot of our clients are storing commercially sensitive data in our product, because these are brands that haven't even launched yet. They are going through price negotiations. So we get a lot of scrutiny from the compliance and security teams of our clients on, how secure is your platform. So we had to take care of, how do we ensure that we build a solution that can meet all those requirements. So there were, of course, some technical challenges we had to address. But I would say for Access Hub, it was probably more the business need and how do you build a scalable solution that also allows a lot of customization opportunities to clients was probably the key.
Okay. Yeah. And the reason I kind of double click into that is I do see a lot of SaaS companies thinking that SaaS is a technical challenge, and then they really focus on that and they forget about the business side. So it's so good hearing from you that, hey, make sure that you're paying attention to both sides of that.
Because I think while SaaS is great conceptually, but it also comes with its challenges, because once you've gone down a certain route, if you then have to make changes and pivot and add new capabilities, it can become a lot more complex, and you will add a lot more technical debt if you don't plan this properly. So that's really quite critical that your architecture supports scalability. The way you are rolling out a product allows for enough room to customize and make changes depending on the client needs. Otherwise, you start to hit a lot of hurdles.
Exactly. So yeah, let's get into the technical just a little bit deeper here. So you brought up scale. So how do you do this in a scalable way? Like, how did you think through scale whenever you were building this?
So I think for us, the scale was at sort of different levels. One, it was, how do we build the user experience which allows our application to support multiple brands, but then within each brand, often there are multiple indications that a product launches in. So how can the UX support, that sort of capability? So we had to do a lot of, and we always take a design-led approach to product development. So we did lots of workshops to ensure that we can, the front end of the application can support the future scaling that our clients might require. The second part of that was how do you bring multiple clients onto that, and then you're talking about the number of users who might be accessing it, the number of clients that we might onboard onto the platform. And I think that's where Azure really came in, really handy, because it allows that the cloud platform scalability as such. We had to also focus on the application architecture to ensure that also allows, to some extent, the ability to roll out new features going forward. And depending on, say, a client appetite, if we want to go with a bare minimum set of features, how can you easily turn on and turn off certain capabilities? So there were lots of things that kind of cut across database, architecture, the UX, and the underlying cloud that we had to plan for.
Okay. And you said you were using SQL Server. Are you using IaaS, or are you using PaaS services? Like what, do you know what you're using sort of as that scale
PaaS
layer inside of there? Okay. Using PaaS services.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So building to that level then made it pretty easy for you to basically scale up resources. Excellent.
Exactly.
And then what about security? Anything you want to cover in terms of security? Like how did you build this in a secure way? Because it sounds like your customers have, they obviously want this to be incredibly secure.
Exactly. Yeah, you're talking about really sensitive data that, they wouldn't, in fact, they sometimes don't want other users within the team to have access to that as well. So we had to really take care of security at multiple levels as such. And again, that's where we really used a lot of native Azure and SQL Server security as such. The way the architecture was designed, we had dedicated database instances through the Azure DB pool for every client. So there was an isolation at a database level for every client. So that way we could ensure that, there is no data leakage that can happen, and one client can't access, another client's data in any way. So that was quite important. We're also leveraging the Azure Application Gateway and Firewall to ensure that we can control who has access to the application as well. We do single sign-on integration and the inbuilt application security using the .NET features. And I think for some critical data, we also use the Azure Key Vault, I think, for ensuring that we can protect that. So yeah, it's kind of a multi-tiered approach to give our clients confidence around data security.
Excellent. And then when you first went into production, I mean, it sounds like this was, a dramatic shift, like as you said, from, consultancy to having to run and maintain a SaaS application. So were there any surprises when the first application went into production? And then I guess whenever the second went into production, I'm assuming that went a little bit better, but were there any surprises along that journey?
Yeah, I'll probably take the liberty again to answer that for our two products, because with Access Hub, we actually surprisingly didn't have too many issues because of the way the application is built. And one of the key requirements we had set for ourselves was that we should be onboard a new client with zero engineering team's involvement. We have a separate admin portal that we've built that configures our customer portal. So we've taken out a lot of the complexity outside of our core product into a separate application which controls that. So because of that, the way we onboard new clients has become really, really straightforward, and we are able to do that within a matter of 2 or 3 days as such. Where we had some challenges were migrating our legacy clients onto the new platform, and it was more to do with the data mapping and ensuring that we can retain some of the past kind of data mapping and integrity sort of issues, but that was probably not as complex as we had thought. Neuro is where, when we first launched it, and it's now more than 18 months since we launched Neuro, that we had probably more challenges than we had expected. We underestimated the level of business validation rules that were required to avoid data issues in the application. We started seeing, so we of course spent a few months QCing the application before it actually went live. But lots of things didn't get picked up because you're talking about over 5 million data points, that you are handling. And with very complex data relationships across different types of data going back to 1991 or so. So that's where we probably, if we had to do this again, we would probably be spending a lot more time in defining better data validation rules. I would probably also be focusing on taking some of the complexity out of the core product, like we did with Access Hub for data updates, data corrections, and QC, which we're doing now as we speak, to ensure that we can push clean data into the production environment, do a lot of that, the validations and everything outside of that allows us to then move towards a more continuous delivery kind of model where we can identify issues, fix them, and push them to live real time. So yeah, there's quite a lot of learnings from there that we actually have had over the last 18 months. Actually, one other thing I should mention was Neuro is a data visualization platform. So it has very complex charting capability that it needs. And when we first started the chatting library, I think it was Sync Fusion that we used, was not scaling up to the level that we wanted. So we had to kind of midway through the product development, we had to change the chatting library to move to D3. And that then really simplified things. And for us, that was really critical. We wanted clients to get the insights the way they would be able to understand, interpret it. We didn't want to make it overly complex or to simplify it so much that it doesn't really give them the insight. Layering multiple sorts of data points over each other, was what we were trying to achieve. And that we went through a bit of trial and error before we landed on D3.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you have a wealth of experience, which just makes the company better going forward. So I really appreciate you sharing those things. And then I know we mentioned it really quickly earlier, but artificial intelligence, AI, is, kind of changing everything out there, or has the promise of doing that. So have you integrated any AI technologies, or do you have that on the roadmap, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are very excited about the opportunity that presents to us at multiple levels. And again, if I look across the two products, we have the sorts of things we are doing at the moment. In Neuro, as I said, it's a data platform. Today, our clients have to apply filters to get to the results. And what we are working on as a pilot is to use OpenAI and Azure native capabilities with cognitive search and so on to actually allow the capability to ask a simple English question and use the natural language processing to really start giving out the results that the clients are looking for. And that for us, we think would be a game changer, because there is no such solution, at least in our industry, that exists. And we think we can really offer the insights to clients very much easier than they are used to at the moment. We're also looking at some predictive capabilities that we could bring. So for instance, you're launching a new drug in the market today, and you want to know not the price that you'll have, say, when at the time of the launch, but 5 years, 10 years down the line, what could the price, potential be? You want to look at, what are the other products in the pipeline. You want to look at, what the existing competition is, how their prices have changed, and bringing in that predictive capability is what we are working on, which we're really excited about. In Access Hub, there are some simple solutions which we think would be game changer. For instance, we're working on Teams integration with Access Hub to simplify and remove as much friction as possible from users to keep the data up to date. How can you notify them? Hey, Jason, this is what the data looks like. Is this the date the product is launching? Is this the milestone you're in? Yes, no. And you can do that using a chatbot kind of feature and then update that within the application. So I think Teams integration for Access Hub is something that we're working on. So I think there's huge opportunities for us with what we can do with AI ML. And I'm so glad when we read about the whole announcement about OpenAI and Microsoft collaboration, we see the opportunities to stay on the stack and do a lot more would become much easier for us.
And then is this all available? Like, are either of these solutions available in the Azure marketplace? And then what did that journey look like?
So at the moment, one of our products, Neuro, is transacting on Azure Marketplace. When we first heard about it, we saw quite a good opportunity to try and differentiate ourselves in the market, position that product as something that clients can subscribe to rather seamlessly through their existing enterprise agreements that they have with Microsoft. It took us some time to get to that stage because we had to make some changes to our platform to allow for that connectivity with the marketplace. But I think what I was very pleased with was the support we had from Microsoft in ensuring that we understand what was involved in that. We had access to technical resources to address some of the issues that we encountered, and training to ensure that we can go through that journey seamlessly. And I think it took us probably a couple of months or so to get that done. But yeah, today Neuro is transacting on Azure Marketplace, and it's only a few months since it actually launched, but the initial conversations we've had with clients has definitely generated more interest to find out how that might work, because we do end up in situations where our clients' business teams don't have the budget, but there's probably some budget locked in with the enterprise agreement that they are then able to kind of leverage and offset again. So there's definitely huge potential we see to sell through the marketplace. And then going forward, we'll look to bring Access Hub as well.
Excellent. That sounds like you're seeing some really great benefits there. Well, cool. Keshav, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about Access Infinity and about a couple of your products and some of the great lessons that you learned along the way that we're able to share with others. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Jason. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about the journey that we've been on. Really enjoyed that.